Are we live? We are live. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Queer Cats Live, and we're here tonight with Jan and Jane and Chris from the League of Women. I can't talk. League of Women Voters, and we're going to discuss when the next election is. When do we vote? Why do we vote? What's on the line? And why should we vote? And if you're not somebody who runs out and votes for everything, I do because that's the only way we make change. But we're going to hear from these two about what can we do, and for people who say it doesn't matter, there's nothing we can do, you're wrong, and they're going to tell you why. So welcome, you two. Welcome. I think Chris, there you are. You froze up there for a minute. Um, they have brought some things that we're going to be scrolling across the screen too, and these are things that you can um, check into.
Write down all of those websites.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn it over to you two because I'm anxious to hear what you got to say. I don't know who wants to go first.
Okay, well, thank you. It's so Chris looks like she's a little frozen right there again.
Yeah.
So Chris Haskell is our chairman of the Voter Services Committee, a subcommittee of the League of Women Voters. And I'm Jane Powell, and I'm a member of the committee too. And so every chance we can get, we want to connect with our community and talk about voting. So that's what we're going to do. So Chris, I think we'll start out. Okay, Chris.
Am I frozen?
You were.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for having us back again.
Of course.
We had a record turnout in the last election, so maybe our being on the QueerCast had something to do with that. Who knows?
We hope it helped.
Encouraged people to vote. So we're hoping for a record turnout this time too. April 4th, we should mention, I guess, starting out. So thank you. Jane, should we start with the My Vote website or?
I think that's a good idea. Now, I don't think we can share our screen though, can we?
No.
So we'll just talk through it. The My Vote website is the official website of the Wisconsin Election Commission. It's so they keep it up to date, and it is the official statewide web site to register to vote. And it has a wealth of information and resources. So if you can only remember one place to go look for registering and what's on your ballot, the myvotewisconsin.gov is the place to remember.
Well, I'm going to walk you through the 8 tabs on My Vote. And if you're watching on a computer and you also have your phone handy or vice versa, you could go to this website. So as I'm talking, you can see what I'm talking about, and Jane can jump in here too. So the first tab on My Vote is My Voter Information, and you can go in there and see how many times you voted, your whole history of voting, and hopefully you have a real long history. The second tab is Find My Polling Place. So if you've moved, or if you don't have a real long history of voting and you aren't even sure where you vote, you can find that by just putting in your address at this same website that's on the screen. The really big one for this election would be what's on my ballot. There's a very long ballot for the April 4th election, and it's great to go in, whether you go in now and start studying what's on the ballot, or even an hour before you vote. If you go on to that tab and see exactly what's on your ballot, then you'll have some idea of how you want to vote. You can also print that out, which is something I did, and then you can mark ahead of time, and you can take that in with you if you want to have a little cheat sheet when you go in to vote. And we'll talk a little more about specifically what's on the ballot. If you've moved or had a name change, you can update that through what's on my through my vote. And you can register to vote. If you haven't registered, you can register. Online registration is now closed, so you can't register now, but it's an option for when online registration is open. You can vote absentee by mail, so you can go in and request an absentee ballot, and it's not too late to do that. You could go in right now and request an absentee ballot. And as my son said, I was visiting my son this weekend, and he had his absentee ballot there, and he said, "Wow, Mom, this is really easy. I've never done this before. They mail this right to my house. I check what I want. I put it back in my mailbox." He said, "I never realized this." And that's the son of a League of Women Voters person. He should have known that. But anyway, if you would like to do that, that's how you do it on this website. And then you can track your ballot. So, sometimes we hear from people, "Oh, well, they don't get your ballot, or it won't get you on time, or whatever." You can track it through this website. So I always vote absentee, so I can go in and see, oh, they got my request for my ballot. Oh, they mailed the ballot out. Oh, it should be in my mailbox on such and such a date. And then when I turn it, it'll show, oh, we received your ballot. So if you're not sure of the safety of voting by mail, Track My Ballot is a good option for you. And then the 8th tab is called Vote Absentee in Person. Absentee in person is what we usually refer to as early voting. So early voting starts tomorrow. So you can go in and vote early, avoid the lines. If you're in the city of La Crosse, you vote at City Hall. But if you're not, and you want to know the hours of when you can vote, you can find that also on myvote.wi.gov. So tons and tons of information there. So that was the first thing we wanted to start out by telling you and making sure everybody was aware of that terrific website.
Then another terrific website that if you're looking, once you're registered, which we want everybody to register, and the criteria for being a voter in Wisconsin is you have to be 18 years old, a U.S. citizen, and not currently serving any felony or probation or parole related to that felony. Once those 3 criteria are met, then you can register to vote and vote. As Chris said, if you change your address and you have not lived at your current address for 28 days, you do need to vote at your previous address because there is a 28-day residency requirement as well. But so once you're registered and you're, ready to vote, we want informed voters. And so the League of Women website is always kept up to date with current information about any candidate forums that have occurred. And so our website is on the screen there now. And if you go to our website on the home page, right now, it has just all things to do with the election. So I'm just going to go to that website. You don't even have to scroll on a tab initially. It just talks about, the voting days. Then it's got information on what you need to be an educated voter. There's information about the Supreme Court race, information about the La Crosse School District. If you're in our school district, there's a tab that you can read information about the school board referendum and a link to the La Crosse School Board District website, which also has all the information about any upcoming virtual or in-person forums that they're going to discuss the referendum and what the funds are intended for. And it also, there's an area called In the News. And so any news articles that are pertinent in our region, in our La Crosse Tribune, that have to do with issues of voting, there's interesting articles that if you missed it from not getting the paper or just want to go back and review things, it talks about the different school board candidates. It talks about the constitutional amendment on the ballot. There's one about that. There's one about abortion history and advocates, both sides of the issues. So, and then Supreme Court. So anyway, there's lots of good news articles on our website, as well as candidate forums. There was a recent forum on March 8th at Lincoln Middle School that was co-hosted by the League of Women Voters and Young Leaders Igniting Transformation, both nonpartisan, nonprofit organizations that invited the school board candidates to come together. And I think there was only 2 that were unable to be there. So there's a good video that you can watch on our website about the forum at Lincoln. So there's also, let's see, isn't there, Chris, I think there's a video from the Supreme Court
Yes.
forum that had, but that was before the primary, so it was all 4 candidates were on it, but it's still some information about candidates that have been narrowed down to just 2 now for the Supreme Court race. So it's really a wealth of information as well. And one of the other things that it talks of, you can access there is the vote411.org website. That's an online voter guide that, again, is sponsored by the League of Women Voters. Again, we do not support either side or candidate. We invite all candidates to participate in the Vote 411 guide. It's an online guide where we've contacted, for this April 6th election, we contacted 96 candidates in 61 local offices. So it's town boards, town mayors, school board members in this La Crosse area. So, the Bangor area, West Salem, La Crosse, just the whole area, Vernon County. And so we've contacted people and invited them to respond to a few questions that we asked all the candidates, depending on their job description. We describe what the job is that they're running for, and then ask some questions. And then each candidate types in their own response verbatim, which we published on March 17th. So if you went to the vote411.org and you type in your address, you can see what's on your ballot, and you'll be able to see each of the races. And it actually takes you then to the race with the candidates, with their picture, their background information, and how they chose to answer the questions that we posed. We had a 45% response to that. So we contacted 96 and 45% responded. So it's really a good resource to find out about a lot of people. Another point to make about that is that last year in 2022, just in our area, there was over 3,000 people that used that website to learn more about their candidates. So it's a great way. And when we call the candidates, we've got a committee that does it. The candidates are so friendly, and they thank us for including them. They're happy to have another way to reach out to voters so that people know who they are. So it's very much interactive community resource that we really hope people will take a look at. I guess that's some of the important resources.
We've kind of been going on and on. Did you have questions for us?
So here I am. I had to unmute my microphone so that people didn't hear me going, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know that it's a nonpartisan thing that the League of Women Voters does, but can you explain either way, people vote. What is at stake this time in terms of our Supreme Court?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. So, as Jane referenced, there was a primary. There were 4 candidates running. It's now down to 2 candidates.
Mhm.
I would be shocked if you haven't seen some kind of ad somewhere for
Yeah,
one or both of these candidates.
yeah.
The New York Times called this race, the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, the most important race in the country right now. And millions of dollars are being poured into this race. So why do I even mention that? Well, somebody's pouring millions of dollars into a race. There must
Mhm.
be a reason.
There's a reason for sure.
There's a
Yeah.
reason. So there are 7 justices on the Supreme Court. Right now, the balance is 4-3 conservative. It's one of the conservative justices who has decided, Patience Roggensack, to retire. So if the conservative judge that is running to be in her place wins, the balance will remain conservative 4-3. If the progressive candidate wins, then it will change the balance of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will be progressive, lean progressive. So what does that mean? There are several cases, we can't predict, but
Mhm.
there are several cases that it's believed will come before that court. By the way, Supreme Court judges are elected for 10 years.
Okay.
So it's a long-term job.
Huge.
The
That's
Supreme Court.
huge.
Yeah. So for example, it's pretty sure that the abortion issue will come before the Supreme Court. And that would have to do with keeping the hundreds years old law that we're now under in the state of Wisconsin about abortion. It's pretty sure that fair maps would be brought in front of the Supreme Court again. Again, Wisconsin is one of the most gerrymandered states in
Mhm.
the United States, and the Supreme Court could change that depending on this election and how it goes. There's voting rights that can come before the Supreme Court. It's thought that if the 2024 election has some of the issues that the last presidential election had, with Wisconsin being one of the important states in the presidential election, that could end up in front of our Supreme Court. So tons of really huge issues that I don't think we've realized until recently that, that third branch of the government, I guess that is kind of important. It really does affect us.
Exactly. I think we hear unless they're talking about the Supreme Court, and to me they make it sound like general terms. So we think of the Supreme Court of the United States.
Right.
So we're always looking at the federal Supreme Court, and I don't think there's enough knowledge out there or enough knowledge imparted about what about the state Supreme Court. Like I have had some people say to me, "Oh, we have a state Supreme Court?" Yeah, we do. And I don't know how many, but it blows my mind how many people don't know we have a state Supreme Court. And then what effect does the Supreme Court have on what I consider to be really important rights and decisions? The whole gerrymandering thing kills me. It's like, okay, let us fix this and pat these all into place so that we get the results that we want, and that's got to go. Women's rights. I mean, there's so many things that I daily hear people talk about, and that is how Wisconsin is really, really, really poor on rights. And but then they don't go vote. And I'm just what do you say to people to convince them to vote? I mean, what do you say to
Yep.
people that just say, yeah, I know, but I don't have time. My kid has soccer tonight or whatever. Um,
I'll say there's multiple ways to vote. It's not hard to vote. The high school students are learning to vote.
yes.
We go to the schools now, the seniors, and we talk to them about the history of voting and how to register on My Vote, and they're registered in 5 minutes.
Nice.
And they say it doesn't take that long, and it's important. It's your civic duty. The kids tell us that. That's how they.
Yeah, that's nice.
But I think to say too that if you don't care that the rules and stuff is the way it is right now, and you'd rather let somebody else make the rules, and you're happy to live by whatever rules they set up for you,
Hmm.
then I guess it's okay. It's if you were going to go on a trip with 10 people and 3 people decided where you wanted to go, and 2 people they said, well, we'd rather go somewhere else, and the other 5 people didn't vote, I guess all 10 of you would go where those 3 people said they want to go.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So if if you really are happy with everything, but it's
Right.
not, and then if you say from all these resources we've offered, it's too much. I don't have time to research that. I don't have time to go to the websites. I don't have time to listen to a forum. Then think about what's important to you and your values,
Hmm.
and think about who you trust, who you respect, who
Mhm.
you turn to for help with decisions,
Hmm.
and talk to them and say, well, what do you think about this election? Who are you voting for and why?
Right.
It's not wrong to ask somebody who you trust what to do, or if you don't feel like you have time
Yeah.
to know every detail and
Hmm.
every issue in depth.
Right.
That's like one of the students said, I can't be in Washington making the laws, so I need to find somebody who's fairly close to my values and vote for them and have them do the job.
Right.
So it's and they only get elected if people vote. And in our local elections with the such as city council, school board elections that are going to happen here in La Crosse anyway,
Hmm.
and in the and they're contested elections. There's more than one person running for a certain number of seats,
Hmm.
and it can be that if we don't get a good voter turnout, 50 votes can make the difference between who's going to
Yeah.
25 votes, and actually it could be 3 votes.
I know it's
There'll be a recount, but it doesn't matter if one person has 3 votes more than the other, they win the majority. So, and everybody has an idea about what they want in the schools, whether they have their own kids in it or their neighbors or they went to the schools. Everybody's got some idea about that.
right.
So and with the early voting, like Chris said, there's no lines. You just take a lunch hour, go, or
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
or absentee. So when people say, well, I don't have time or my vote doesn't count, I think that if they looked into it a little bit, they would find that it's not as hard or time consuming as they expected.
Yeah, true. And you know what? I think that they would also if you're very opinionated about anything. I mean, I'm opinionated about everything, but if people have, just like you said, if you have an opinion on how you want to see the school board go, or what you want to see the school board accomplish, or if the school board is wanting to do something you don't want them to do, whatever the situation is, the only thing you can do about it is vote. You can't say, well, the school board is blah blah blah, and then sit home on election night. But I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed in the couple years I've been voting, and we started voting at 18, even back then, in the 70s. And the thing that I have noticed is people think that the only important election is the presidential election.
Mm.
And you know what? And I try to tell people, hey, your president's only as good as your Congress. You know what I mean? If you vote for the president, but you don't vote for your senators and representatives, then you really have accomplished nothing. Even if your candidate wins, you may not still see what you want to happen. And it's the same thing with the local stuff. Local stuff is where we live.
Mm-hmm.
This directly affects us right now today where we live, whether it's city council, whether it's school board or representatives, or in Wisconsin, the Supreme Court judge. This is we have 5 kids and they're all voting age, and we can't get one of them to vote. And I said to Joe, how is it that they have 2 moms that are psycho about voting, and they just look at us like, yeah, I know. Our daughter said last time, I'm tired. I'm just going to go to bed. It's like, it's 6 o'clock, you know. And they know how we feel. They know. Yeah, they know what's at stake. Our one daughter has a girlfriend and they want to get married someday. And I said, you better hope the vote goes the way you want it to. When Joe and I mean, we were going to get married anyway, but we hurried up when Trump got elected. We hurried and got married, probably sooner maybe than we would have, because we were afraid that it was going to get turned around while he was in office. And so, but those are some of the things we try to explain to them.
I'm happy to say that I can only speak for La Crosse County because those are the statistics I really analyzed. But I'm happy to say that our 18 to 25-year-old vote has really increased in the last couple of years. So we're really seeing university students turn out, Western, Viterbo, and we do a lot of work in those schools. I won't take all the credit for it, but I'll just say we're trying in all those schools to get people to vote. And they think the reason that Tony Evers is governor right now is because of the vote of that age group is what
Nice.
him over the line. I'm not being partisan. I'm just saying that's what the facts show, that group went huge for him, and that's why he's our governor right now.
You see, yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think that maybe, I love the fact that you guys go into the high schools. I mean, that's amazing because, I know that in a lot of areas that doesn't happen. And when I was a teacher, I taught for 20 years in inner city Flint. And some of the kids voting was the last thing on their mind. But it was so cool because we had a counselor, and she was a huge union person, and she was very pro voting, and you need to go vote. She would go around the school, knock on the door of the classroom and say, who can I sign up to vote? Who can I register? And she went classroom to classroom and said, come on. And she didn't let, if they were just sitting there looking at her, she's like, no, you come here, and it's funny because they didn't have an interest until they registered. And then once they registered, there was some ownership there, I think, and some civic pride that they had registered. And so now they wanted to go vote. And I think it started them out in knowing how to get their voices heard. And with kids sometimes, teenage kids feel like they don't have a voice. and they feel like everything's happening to them, which, I mean, life happens to us. Yes,
Right,
that's true.
Right.
But the quality of our life in this country depends on voters. It just simply does, one way or the other.
And one of the statistics we used, as Jane said, we went around to 8 area high schools. One of the statistics that we used is between now and the 2024 election, which is the next presidential,
Mhm.
8 million people will turn 18.
Wow.
That could affect an election if all 8 million of those people would vote.
Don't you know it? If we had 8 million people that were turning 18, and we did that every year, if we had done that a couple years ago, we'd have Bernie Sanders for president. I went to his rallies, and I was working at his headquarters in Michigan, and so we were lucky. We got to get into the rallies. I attended the debate between Bernie and Hillary in Flint, and you know, I can't describe to you what one of his rallies was like. Like, I know you see pictures and stuff. There were people as far as you could see, and they were lined up outside and down the sidewalk. Even if they couldn't get in, they gathered around the building and
Really?
stood in. Oh my God, it was like 10 below zero one day. I thought I was going to die. I'm not delicate, but I was cold. And they stayed there. And when in going to his rallies, I never could figure out how he did not end up being president. I still can't explain it, but I think it's people who were all gung ho and agreed with him and loved him and then didn't vote. I mean, I don't know, but I'm convinced of it because every rally I went to was insane. I mean, insane. I felt like those 8 million people that were turning 18 were there, and to get kids excited and invested in voting. Oh my God, kudos to you guys because it's so important. We got to start them when they're young so they continue to vote.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so what we did this last week is we went to the Hamilton community night on the third Thursday of the month. Hamilton has a nice community event from 5:30 to 7, and so they have a meal for the families, and the kids have an activity. It may be an instructional activity or more sports related or something, but anyway, this time it was sports related. And so we were there with a table, and we had a little election for the kids, and we had them vote on whether they liked a circle, a triangle, or a square. And so we had these little tiny kids that couldn't read coming up and marking in the ballots, and we'd say, now you can't, it's private, secret, don't let us see your answer.
Yeah.
And,
but it gave them a taste for it, didn't it?
Yeah, and then they had to put it in a little ballot box. And
nice.
Then they announced the winner over the loudspeaker. The circle won, and but the kids started, and we're going to continue to do that. And so
I suppose we probably shouldn't say we used a little bit of bribery because the kids got a piece of candy if they voted, right?
We had some lifesavers. And,
well, that's what you should start doing is handing out candy at the polls. I know if they're teachers, they'll go.
So one little girl tried to vote 3 times by changing her clothes.
Are you serious?
It wasn't until the 3rd time that I caught her and I recognized.
Oh my God. I love it.
Well, it was a teaching moment.
It was.
She knew she wasn't supposed to.
That is funny. Well, of course she knew she wasn't supposed to, but she tried to get away with it. I love that. Yeah. And you know what? If you keep doing stuff like that, the kids are going to look forward to the time when they can actually really vote.
Right.
It's such a privilege and an honor to be able to do that. And I just want to fall on the floor and gnash my teeth because we can't get our kids to vote. I don't know.
I think you should take them out to dinner. I don't know.
After they vote, not before. I'm not going to say, "Oh, let's go to dinner," and then you go vote, and they'd say, "Oh, it was a really good dinner. I'm too full." But yeah, something. I'll bribe them. I'm not beyond that. I'm not. I won't tell them who to vote for, but I certainly will
that's
bribe
right.
them to vote.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think that.
I think continuing to be a good example and just telling them what it means to you and always being sure to vote and stuff, I think is, what you can do. And then
Yeah.
maybe review the election results with them and see how it turned out and sit down with them and see, well, what do you think about this? And
Yeah. They asked me, "How old were you when you voted?" And I said, "We got to vote the year I turned 18, and well, that was the year that we could either vote for or against Richard Nixon." So they're like, "Richard Nixon, what?" But yeah. And I said, if enough people had voted, he wouldn't have been president. So, but I don't know. It's just they seem removed from it or something, and I don't know how they can, because Joe and I are always like "Rah, rah, rah," to each other. I mean, they hear us discuss it, and we talk to them about it, but I wish we could make them do it, but we can't.
Yeah, it's a voluntary participation, that's for sure. And we want it to be voluntary. We don't,
Yeah, but it's a privilege,
mhm.
and
Another thing is we've talked about, like Chris said, it's good even if it's an hour before you enter that ballot box. See what's on your ballot, because if you go to vote without any preparation,
yeah,
then you get into the ballot box and all of a sudden you're reading, the ballot initiatives or the referendums, and the words start, maybe there's a line and you think you have to hurry. So now you're feeling a little rushed.
Yeah.
Or there was a line and you didn't get to vote because there was 20 people ahead of you. And now you got to get back to lunch or work.
Yeah.
So now you think you got to do it real quick. So it's a good idea to know what you're going to vote for before you go into the ballot box, because you don't want to sweat it out and think, oh, geez, I don't know,
True.
So that's why looking it up on that My Vote, what's on my ballot, and reading through all the referendums, there's 2 constitutional amendments with the state related to bail, state setting bail, and a constitutional referendum, a non-binding referendum advisory to the legislature on a worker's the responsibility of a worker in order to get tax-funded benefits. But it's let's see, and that one is just it's a advisory referendum, so there's no law that's going to change based on that. But the bail referendums, once the vote happens, they've been passed as proposals twice in the legislature, and if they are passed by a majority at this April election, they will immediately become amendments to our Wisconsin Constitution.
Okay.
So they will immediately take effect. So it's a good thing to take a look at those. And as the League of Women Voters, we're nonpartisan and stuff. We don't take sides, but we take positions on what we think is in the best interests of society. And the League has stated that they think that the bail issues and the worker referendum, they would recommend that people don't vote yes on those.
Okay.
They think that for the betterment of both sides of the issue, that it's they're not going to be beneficial changes.
Okay. Can we share with our viewers what those? I'm going to ask you this. I don't know if you have it right in front of you. That's kind of an unfair thing.
It's on your ballot. It's on your ballot. There's nothing wrong with knowing what's on your ballot.
I had them right here if you want me to read them to you. So is that what you meant to read?
Yeah, I want people to know what's on there.
So again, I just went to My Vote and put what's on my ballot, printed it out, and I can see the question. So question number 1 is conditions of release before conviction. So shall Section 8, Article 1 of the Constitution be amended to allow a court to impose on an accused person being released before conviction conditions that are designed to protect the community from serious harm. So basically, they're saying, should the judge be able to consider whether this person would be of harm to the community when they're determining bail.
Mhm.
The second one is cash bail before conviction. Shall Section 8, Article 1 of the Constitution be amended to allow a court to impose cash bail on a person accused of a violent crime based on the totality of the circumstances, including the accused previous convictions for a violent crime, the probability that the accused will fail to appear, the need to protect the community from serious harm, and prevent witness intimidation and potential affirmative defenses. And one of the reasons that the league is recommending voting no is that violent crime is not defined.
Mhm.
And so a judge would have so much leeway in
Yeah.
determining what he or she believes is violent.
It's pretty subjective, isn't it?
Right. And people could be held in jail. And again, they're not convicted, they're accused, and they could be held in jail for a long time if they can't pay the bail.
Right. Right. So it's good for people to know those two things then before they walk in. And somebody asked me the other day, we were talking about it. So if I'll go back for just a second to the Supreme Court judge. If candidate X wins, how soon do they become a judge? When are they sworn in?
I think it's August.
Is
it August?
Too.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It was funny because we were talking about it, and when they asked me, I said, "Well, I don't know."
Yeah,
All of a sudden, I realized I didn't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but yeah.
I know it.
Since both Jane and I had August in our heads, maybe we're right.
That's probably right. I think that's probably right.
Because I think the new terms kind of start in the fall. That's when the cases get offered up to them.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And any case that goes to the state Supreme Court has to be sent through one of the lower courts.
Circuit,
Okay.
maybe.
Or maybe appellate. There's a really interesting explanation of the overview of the Wisconsin Supreme Court and how it operates on one of the webinars that's actually on the League of Women Voter of Wisconsin website. It's there's a lawyer and a law professor that explains background and overview of the Wisconsin Constitution and
we also have this flyer. I'm really high tech.
Oh.
You're showing it. I'll drop a bunch of those
That's
off.
how I do it. Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
bring some down and then people can grab these for.
Fantastic. I
Excellent
appreciate that.
Yeah, there's so much interesting stuff to learn. It's like a physics or a civics class. If you watch a couple of webinars, I learned a lot watching them. There's some cases that for our state Supreme Court, 3 judges, if they say, yes, we'll accept the case, then it'll be accepted to be reviewed.
See, those are all things that even I don't know.
But if a certain other way that it gets offered up to the Supreme Court, like if it's kind of an emergency or something, I think it has to be 4 judges say, yes, we'll review it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, there's so many technicalities that, and then when the Supreme Court makes a rule, it's not so much the yes or no, agree or disagree with whatever's been brought before them. It's more the written opinion and how that influences the law at all different levels of the court throughout the whole state. And so it's a much broader area of influence than just a yes, no on one certain question.
See,
So
that's
the
all stuff we should
report,
know.
it's a
isn't
very
it?
thoughtful process. And so
Yeah.
One of the things that I was seeing was when and this was partly advised by a retired court judge. One of the things they recommended how to decide who you're going to vote for the Supreme Court. One of them is, do they share your values? If you read as much as you can
Right.
about the people that are going to be voting.
Yes.
To see if they share some of your general values. Don't vote for somebody who you can depend on them always voting the same way, because that's not necessarily
always good.
State and for our democracy. So
Mhm.
don't look in a way it was like reliability. Don't necessarily vote on them because you think they're the most reliable.
Gotcha.
And then another thing was just whether or not they were going to add integrity to the court. If you felt that they were going to add integrity. And then basic things like, what is their educational background? How much experience do they have? What types of law have they practiced? I mean, these are all solid foundational things to think about when you're voting for somebody.
That's good advice.
Try to find out about, because they're going to be making laws for 10 years that are wide scope throughout our state in all aspects of the level of the law. So.
And they're laws that are going to affect all of us in one way or the other for a long time. Maybe for the rest of our life even. I mean, I hope not, but still 10 years is a long time.
So anyway, I think that there's just a lot. I think the more you know about it, it's just like anything. When you're a novice, you don't invest so much in it,
Yeah.
Once you start to learn about it, I think that you feel more committed and interested, and you want to participate. And voting is no different than that. It's like many things in our lives.
Yeah.
The more you know, the more you want to know. And
I think that's right. I think it's true. And I think that maybe part of that is, just like you said, educating people who don't really understand what they're voting for or see the importance of it. Just try to even just make some kind of little tiny chink in their armor, I'm running out of time.
Yeah, because we got to get the other guys.
All right. Ladies,
okay.
Thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And there's lots of questions that some of us have, and many people we know keep asking us. We're having you on here, and they think that we know everything you do. So can we maybe have you back again to ask some more questions?
You betcha. Anytime.
Right.
And one thing I'll say too is that the election observers from all areas of life are there. And so the elections are safe, secure, observed, transparent. Everybody can trust that their vote's going to get counted the same as everybody else's. So
nice. And that is important right now with the climate of elections and voter fraud. It's important to know that.
And if you want to be an election observer, just contact your city clerk and register to be an observer. So anybody can do it.
Oh, okay. Now see, I didn't know that either. So, well, I'm going to ask you back. So get ready.
Great. We can't wait. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being on with us. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right. All right. So we have Kyrie and Garrett who is going to bring us the trans report. Here they are. I'm going to turn. Oh, there you are. Now I can see you both. Okay. You got lots of stuff to tell us about?
Fair amount.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to get off here and let you do your thing. Here, let me see.
So hello. We are counting down the days to, it is 11 days to Trans Day of Visibility. So we wanted to cover a few things that are happening, going on in terms of not just legislation that's happening, because we've seen it. We're feeling it every day, but also looking at how we're fighting back on a day-to-day basis, because we're also living that truth. And so a few different things happening in the news for this week. One of the things I wanted to highlight starting out is a wonderful allyship happening in Nebraska by Senator Michelle Kavanaugh. There's a trans health care bill. They're being proposed to ban any gender affirming care for anyone under age of 19. It's one of many states proposing these type of bans. We're looking at about 23 on a day-to-day basis. Nebraska also has 3 other bills that are up for this. But the cool thing about Michelle Kavanaugh is that she is going at it and fighting this fight with us. She has been filibustering this bill for about 3 weeks now, going on, covering topics just all around the spectrum, from the legislation itself to just fish fries or Girl Scout cookies or the Madagascar movie. Literally anything she can talk about to get this bill off the docket. And that's the kind of allyship we need moving towards us in the community right now. So I just wanted to have a moment. Like, I don't know that I could even talk about, like, probably not fish fries. I can maybe talk about Girl Scout cookies for that long. But at the same time, just finding these ways to move forward and build that allyship and see that fight moving on.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to talk about there. I mean, yeah, the Madagascar movie is a pretty good movie. So,
right? And it's got a few sequels. So
yeah, can talk about the acting, about the cast. Very important, but I don't know if I could do a 3-day filibuster or even like a
3 week.
Yeah,
3 week.
3
Yep.
week. Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay, I misheard you. Yeah, I don't know if I could do a 3-hour filibuster. I don't really. My attention span wouldn't be long enough. So is that all that you have thoughts on? So one quick thing to interject before we go to our next story is you'll see that there's a link down there from the Trans Joy project, it is, I believe.
Yep. Out of the organization Forge in Milwaukee. They work primarily with trans people. They're just looking, with the Trans Day of Visibility coming up on the 31st, to have different stories about trans joy. And like, especially right now, that's a lot of what we need, because it's hard facing a day-to-day basis. And so they're finding ways to get out those stories of trans joy. If you are a trans person and want to submit your story, you can go to that link below, and there's actually different prizes that they have to give out that you'd be entered for a drawing for, and just submitting your story. Doesn't have to be, can be anonymous, doesn't have to be publicized, but just getting it out there and naming what makes you joyful as a trans person.
Yeah, it's definitely been a really hard and scary last few weeks. I know we were talking about like bans on gender affirming healthcare and all that, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing more of those in the future. And I'm sure it's really hard. I mean, it's been really hard on me. Just there's a kind of a general feeling of powerlessness that spreads throughout the community in these times. I know even like having this mouthpiece just to talk about trans issues, however, small or large it may be, is really almost, even small things like that has helped me feel less powerless in these times. So I think it's very important to make people feel empowered and to get to share their stories in these kind of times.
Yeah, so very true. I feel the same way. And like, not to change the subject at all, but speaking of different medical bans and stuff like that, I believe you have something out of Minnesota.
Yeah, so looking sort of across the river, good news from across the river, or well, I mean, if you're me, it's on my side of the river, but across the Mississippi. Recently, like 2 weeks ago, actually, the Wednesday after our last Queercast episode, Governor Tim Walz signed an executive order that would protect gender affirming care in Minnesota. And he specifically mentioned the sort of the wave of anti-trans legislation that's been hitting the country, and kind of it's really important to protect gender affirming care, because you're seeing bans all over everywhere, and you gotta get some sort of legislation or executive orders out there. You can't just say that, oh, we value your rights, or we value your right to gender affirming care or whatever, or name changes or whatever. You have to actually represent that. And although it's not like a permanent solution, I think an executive order is a very important thing to put out there. So he rolled this thing out, and actually recently, right along with the signing of this executive order, there was a bill that would sort of make Minnesota, as they call it, a trans refuge state, which would make it so that there'd be protections for people that came to Minnesota seeking gender affirming care. So I know it was with gender affirming care and a lot of the recent bans on not just gender affirming care, but other things in this country, there's been a lot of sort of trying to target people who go to different states to try to seek care that has maybe been outlawed where they live. So it would be very important to pass a bill like this, because that protects people if they do want to travel to Minnesota to go get that care. Because rather than just being like, oh, well, here in Minnesota, we have our rights to gender affirming care protected, then we can also say, well, we're doing something to help protect gender affirming care in states around us. Just kind of supporting the states around you that might not have a governor or like legislators that want to put these things into place. And one really nice thing about that is that it was authored by Leigh Finke. And let me just make sure I have that name right. Yeah, Leigh Finke. I don't want to mispronounce anyone's name. And Leigh Finke is actually Minnesota's first openly trans legislator. So, Leigh Finke also gave a speech right before Tim Walz signed the this executive order. So again, it's another sort of local story about how there's some hope and power that trans people have, rather than just being the target of laws that they didn't vote for or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about so much when you talk about that, and how we have so much going on, and how important these kind of refuge states can be in terms of just creating some sense of hope for us, and looking at just being across the river and what that means to have something out there that could be kind of a hope line for so many people here is just amazing, especially looking at how Wisconsin is in a place where we might have a chance at something, but not necessarily, because our governor is working against a number of different things when it comes to passing any kind of legislation. And the other thing that comes up is just hearing that it's coming from a trans person, and feeling that fight back. And it kind of brings up something for me that happened recently on Saturday. There was a march right here in Wisconsin to the state capitol, where trans people were basically rallying for trans rights, and what it means to kind of build that fight, even when we can't have a refuge state, what it means to stand up for ourselves and make ourselves known. And so they created this, what they considered a day of resistance to trans genocide rally. And this is in response to so many things. This is in response to the different laws going on, being proposed, the fear that it could happen in Wisconsin, which is very real, and the fact that we have lost 3 trans women of color in the past 9 months in just Milwaukee alone. And as painful as that is, I go back to these moments in trans joy, because like I've seen so much, and it hurts to kind of like have it come from this. But the way this community continues to come together in so many ways in terms of hardship and times of real real pain for the community, and how we forge together and build that community and maintain that community and sense of safety with each other. That in a weird way is what trans joy looks like for me too. Is just seeing that that build, that fight, that community, that solidarity, that we're there for each other. And we have hope. It may not be much, and it may be facing a lot of different things right now. But we have hope, and we have people who are fighting, both outside and within the community.
Yeah, like I know if that's one great thing to prevent feeling powerless is just if you're in a position where you're able to reach out to local marches, reach out to local organizations. I know, again, another personal anecdote about me. Like just last year, I checked out the center, and I was just joining one of the meetings, and I had no idea that there was this nice like little community space that was so easy to integrate into. So if you're in a position where you can reach out to like local organizations, then you'll be surprised at how many good, not only conversations you can participate in, but also possibly local events, local, marches. So I think that's a very important part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is all we have for you today.
Yeah.
But we look forward to talking with you in the future, and finding trans joy in every day.
Yep. See you in April.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be April. And I won't be here for the next one, but you guys will join Eddie and talk about how to be a good ally. And it might sound like an oversimplified thing, but certainly sometimes the hardest thing that our allies face is, okay, I feel like I'm an ally, but I don't really know what I should be doing or how I can help. So that's going to be the other one. Good news, huh? If our good news spreads and the people doing the right thing spreads, I know Governor in Michigan signed a bill yesterday banning anti-LGBTQ activity. So, in the news that you guys shared with us tonight, we'll keep going. We got to keep fighting because it's going to get us someplace.
It's been real surprising seeing all of this like outpouring of support across the Midwest.
And you wouldn't think, you would think the Midwest would be the last place that you would see that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we think about the Midwest and we think,
not flyover states anymore, eh?
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you, you two. And I won't see you in 2 weeks, but I'm going to be celebrating my birthday.
Yeah. Happy
My
early
70th birthday in 2 weeks. So, and I'm bragging about it to everybody. So anyway, but I'll be tuning up to watch it anyway. So all right, we're out of here for tonight, and we will see everybody in 2 weeks. Eddie will be here. These two will be here, and I hope you'll be here. So we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.